Hello, apprentice, adept, and veteran shinobi. Welcome to my channel. I'm about to go through this From Software masterpiece one more time, but this time I'll be doing a full walkthrough together with you all. So let's start by watching the game's opening cutscene.
「時は戦国末期、日の本すべてを焼いた戦火はいまだに勢い衰えず、山深い芦名の国にも燃え広がっていた。県政芦名一心、国取りの決戦であった。
野良犬が心すらなくしたか。ああ、共に来るか、飢えた狼よ。
そして戦場で拾われた狼は修行の末熟達の忍びとなった。
忍びの掟は忘れまいな。親の次に大事なもの、お前の心に刻むがよい。あれが今日からお前の主だ。命を賭して守り、たとえ奪われるとも必ず取り戻すのだ。よいな、狼よ。
一心の国取りから24年。芦名の国は斜陽にあり、狼の忍びはすべてを失っていた。育ての義父も、守るべき主も。
忍びよ、目覚めてください。あなたの主のために。
Okay, guys, before we start the game, there are a few quick things I need to explain. First of all, the voice you're hearing was added after the gameplay was recorded. As you can probably tell, English is not my native language.
No shit.
And since I'm not fully fluent and my vocabulary is limited, it's basically impossible for me to play the game and speak English at the same time while recording. Second, even though this walkthrough is recorded as one continuous playthrough, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So after recording, I sometimes add extra notes or explanations that I think are necessary to make the guide complete. Whenever you see this symbol, just know that this part was added separately. Third and last, I won't be covering the story in this walkthrough. The story in Sekiro is pretty straightforward, and the game itself explains everything well enough. My goal here is full completion. That means collecting every important item, fully completing the game, and not missing a single part. One more important thing, I'll be continuing this walkthrough all the way up to New Game Plus 2, so we can fully complete the game and unlock everything the game has to offer. Now, about the Kuros charm. If this item caught your attention and you don't see it in your own game, here's why. You can only see this item after you've completed the game at least once. If this is your first playthrough, the charm is technically with you, just like in my game, but it's invisible. Once you finish the game and enter New Game Plus, or start a fresh playthrough after completing it once, you will be able to see the charm. At that point, the game gives you the option to return it to its owner, which is pretty obvious from the name. Doing that makes the game much harder, but in return, you'll earn more money and XP. I'm going to keep the charm for now, so the balance of money and XP stays the same, and I earn rewards at the same rate as someone playing the game for the first time. Alright, no more explanations needed. Let's start the game together. Just like other From Software games, Sekiro also has two stealth factors: footstep noise and visibility. In previous games, items like the ones you see on the screen could reduce these two factors. But in Sekiro, we have even more ways to push both of them down to an absolute minimum. When you're standing, both your footstep noise and visibility are at their maximum. The moment you press L3 and crouch, you enter stealth mode, and both of these factors immediately drop. On top of that, crouching inside vegetation reduces them even further. There are two skills in the game, one that lowers the sound of your footsteps and another that reduces your visibility. There's also a consumable item that gives you the effect of both the skills for about 1 minute. By stacking all of these together, you can literally move through the game like a ghost. But for now, we don't have any of those skills or items yet. So let's keep our heads down and quietly sneak past this area.
井戸底におるあの忍び、特に稼などしておりませんが、構わぬのでしょうか。
大事ない。刀もなく気力すらない。奴はもうただのふぬけよ。月見櫓が今宵も月に照らされておる。巫女様はまた月明かりで書をお読みかの。
そうじゃな。まだほんの子供というに囚われとは気の毒なことじゃ。
ああ、源一郎様も 何かお考えがあるのだろうが。
Eavesdropping is one of the game's features. Most of the time, it works like a guide, but some eavesdropping moments are actually required to progress a certain quest.
月見櫓の扉はちゃんと閉まっておるか。閉まっておるが、壁の穴はそのままにしておるぞ。ああ、そちらは心配いらぬだろう。穴は崖際じゃ通えるものなどあるまいよ。
よく来てくれた。久しいな、狼よ。
お迎えに参上いたしました。我が主。
表を上げよ。くさび丸、そなたの刀だ。我が忍びよ。主従の約定に従い、命を賭し、我に仕えよ。
御意。
狼よ、傷を負っておるようだな。そうだ、薬水のひょうたんだ。これで傷を癒してくれ。
The healing gourd is our main healing item in the game, and you can increase its uses up to 10 times. Early on, the heal you get from it is pretty limited, but as you progress through the game and unlock a few skills, the healing gourd starts restoring a big chunk of your HP, your vitality.
さて、そなたの体、その後大事はないか？
そのの。
あの世のこと。
はい。
いや、司祭は後にし、今は、このアシナの城を脱さねば。
御意。
堀沿いに進んだ橋の下に、城外への抜け、一心様より、そう聞いたことがある。まずは、その橋下見つけたらそうだな。足の歯笛で合図をくれるか。ほら、昔、聞かせてくれたであろう。その音を頼りに。
Alright, so here we have to make a choice. Do we keep Kuro's charm or do we give it back to its owner? Like I mentioned earlier, giving Kuro's charm back makes the game way harder. But in return you get more money and more XP. I'll break down exactly what returning the charm does, and where it really starts making things tougher a bit later. For now, I'm keeping it, so the playthrough moves forward like a normal new game run. The Homeward Idol is basically the Homeward Bone from Dark Souls. Same idea, different name, as usual with From Software. You use it and boom, you're back at your last checkpoint. Bonfire, Site of Grace, Lamp, pick your favorite. In Sekiro though, it's called a Sculptor's Idol, And here's a nice little early game trick. You can use this item to fix your messed up vitality without wasting a single healing item. The second healing item in the game is pellets. This one is a consumable, so once you use it, it's gone. It doesn't reset like the healing gourd. That said, just like the healing gourd, the amount pellets heal is pretty limited early on. And here's the good part. The same skills that increase your healing gourd's heal also have the exact same effect on pellets. Alright, this is where the game's tutorial really starts. Before anything else, there's one important thing you need to know. In Sekiro, the death penalty is harsher than in other From Software games. But here, during the tutorial, it doesn't matter how many times you die or how many enemies you kill. There's no penalty, and there's no reward either. So pay close attention to this part, because these explanations are really important. If you're struggling with Sekiro, this section is exactly where you should focus. In most From Software games, the goal is simple: deal damage, drain the enemy's HP, and kill them. But in Sekiro, that doesn't work. And this is exactly why a lot of players struggle with the game. They're playing Sekiro like it's Dark Souls. In Sekiro, your main goal is not to drain enemy HP. Your real objective is to break their posture. Dealing damage and lowering their vitality only helps their posture break faster. To defeat enemies in Sekiro, you need to break their posture first, and then finish them off with a death blow. I'll explain the proper combat flow in more detail a bit later, but for now, I want to talk about death blows and the 3 main enemy alert states in the game. In Sekiro, enemies can be in 3 different states. First state, unaware. Enemies have no idea you are there. You have complete freedom to move, use stealth, get behind them, and land a death blow, killing them instantly without a fight. Second state, yellow. This is the alert state. Enemies are suspicious, but they don't know your exact location yet. You'll see a yellow triangle above their heads. They'll start searching for you, so you need to be more careful here. That said, you can still get behind them and land a death blow. Again, no direct fight needed. Third state, red. This means you've been spotted. Enemies know exactly where you are and will actively attack you. You will see a red triangle above their heads. At this point, you have 2 options. You can back off, wait for the enemy to lose aggro, and let them return to a yellow or even normal state, then go back in with the stealth and finish them with a death blow. Or you can stop relying only on stealth, fight them like a trained shinobi, break their posture in combat, and finish them off with a death blow the hard way. Alright, now we get to the most important part of the game, deflection. This is the only real way to break enemy posture in Sekiro. Deflect basically means blocking at the right time. Your weapon in this game is used for both attacking and blocking. If you hold L1, your sword goes into a block stance. In this state, if a physical attack hits you, your vitality won't go down, but instead, your posture bar starts filling up. The more you block, the more your posture fills, until it eventually breaks, and for a short moment, you become vulnerable. Now here's the key difference. If you block right at the moment the attack lands, your block turns into a deflect, and instead of your posture, the enemy's posture starts filling up. When you deal damage to enemies during a fight, you also reduce their vitality. And the lower your vitality, or theirs is, the faster posture builds up and breaks. Now, an important note about Kuro's charm. If you don't have Kuro's charm, blocking will still let about 30% of the damage go through to your vitality. With Kuro's charm, blocking only fills your posture. You take no vitality damage at all. Without Kuro's charm, enemies have higher vitality and posture. Status effects like poison build up much faster on you, and overall, the game becomes way harder. But the most important change is this. Blocking now damages your vitality, and only a proper deflect completely avoids damage. So in general, your combat in Sekiro should be built around deflecting, not attacking. Most of the time, your fight should be about 70% deflecting and 30% attacking. Sometimes, that ratio goes all the way to 100% deflect. No attacks at all, just deflect everything. And in a few specific cases, you're forced to rely mostly on attacks, lowering enemy vitality to break their posture, with deflecting acting mainly as a way to not get hit. Throughout this walkthrough, I'll tell you which enemies you should fight through damage and which ones you should fight almost entirely through deflects. But in most situations, that 30 to 70 ratio is your best approach. Always remember, the goal is to break posture first, then land a death blow. Death blows are what actually kill enemies. One more very important thing to keep in mind, most of your attacks will be blocked or deflected by enemies. The game gives you very limited windows where your attacks actually connect and reduce enemy vitality. That means during combat, you need to pay close attention to enemy movesets. Never spam attack or block. The moment an enemy deflects your attack, you should immediately be ready to deflect their counterattack. This rule applies almost everywhere in the game, especially against elite enemies, mini-bosses, and main bosses that fight you with weapons. Whenever you hear that sharp deflect sound right after your own attack, that means your attack was deflected. And that's your cue. The enemy is about to attack. Now it's your turn to deflect. How many times the enemy attacks after that depends on their combo. And the only way to learn those combos is through trial and error. Each enemy has different patterns and you need to learn them, get used to them, and be ready for whatever they throw at you. Now it's time for one of the coolest death blows in the game, the plunging death blow. When you have the high ground above an enemy, you can perform this death blow. First, lock onto the enemy. Then, at the exact moment the red death blow marker appears, press the R1 button and jump down onto the enemy to execute the death blow. Now it's time to fight the first elite enemy in the game. This guy is the Sekiro version of the Soldier of Godric from Elden Ring, and yeah, calling him an elite is a bit generous. The only real difference is that he needs 2 death blows to go down, which you can clearly see from the 2 red markers above his vitality bar. From now until the end of the walkthrough, I'll put the explanations for consumable items on screen as subtitles, so my amazing pronunciation doesn't torture you. But if you've been paying attention, you might notice that I've already lost some vitality. And a little later things are not going to go well at all. I'll probably need every bit of that missing vitality. So I'm using the Homeward Idol again, just to respawn right here, without wasting any healing items.
この橋の下、堀のどあそこも見張りせよとの。
戦が近いのか。
狼をよく見つけてくれた。さあ、参ろう。
御意。
血の定めから逃れることしかできぬとはな。この城を出てまずはアシナの国を離れるか、あるいはどこかに身を隠す。そなたはどう思う？
御意のままに。
御意か。いや、懐かしい。さあ、参ろう。
Alright, this is where we officially fight one of the game's main prime bosses. Let me tell you something up front. The result of this fight changes absolutely nothing in your playthrough. All you get are two different cutscenes. That's it. If this is your first time playing the game, you'll probably see the first cutscene. But after all these years of playing Sekiro, I'm going to try to show you the second one.
久しいな、ミコよ。叔父上の墓前以来か。
源一郎殿。私はすまぬ。
お任せを。
邪魔立てするか。巫女の忍びを。
足の源一。
忍びよ、卑怯とは言うまいな。巫女はもらっていくぞ。
Let's be honest, that really wasn't worth the effort. The only difference is this: in this cutscene, we get called a bastard, and in the other one, we are more or less treated like we're useless. But Genichiro makes the dumbest mistake possible. By cutting off our arm, he basically helps us out, because before long, we replace it with a prosthetic arm, and that thing turns into our personal weapons arsenal for the rest of the game.
目覚めたようじゃな。どうやらまだ死の定めではないと見える。
Alright guys, after that quick look at this dude who clearly isn't on great terms with personal hygiene, it's probably a good time to wrap up part 1 of the walkthrough. I talked a lot in this part, which is why it ended up being pretty long, but honestly, I think these explanations were necessary for anyone playing the game for the first time. The next part will probably still have a fair amount of my very exciting explanations, but from part 3 onward, you will be hearing a lot less of me. Take care, and I'll see you soon.